Welcome back, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to be your guide today for another deep dive. Look, if you've ever felt just totally overwhelmed when listening to a native English speaker, or, if you've wondered why the English you learned in a textbook sounds absolutely nothing like the English you hear on the streets of New York or LA, well, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're going to demystify how Americans actually speak. We're going to look under the hood of the language, break down the literal mechanics of everyday conversation, and hand you the exact cheat codes to finally unlock native comprehension. Because guess what? It's not about magic, it's just about mechanics. Let's get started.
It's the ultimate question, right? Like, why do native English speakers talk so incredibly fast? We've literally all been there. You study the vocabulary, you memorize the grammar rules, you pass the tests, and then you watch an American movie or try to order a coffee, and the whole thing just sounds like a blur of high-speed noise. It is incredibly frustrating to feel like you're constantly playing catch-up in a conversation, right? Kind of makes you feel like your brain just isn't processing the language quickly enough. But what if I told you that the problem isn't your processing speed at all? Okay, let's dive into this and look at the real secret behind this conversational blur.
And here is the big secret, the total paradigm shift for today's explainer. They don't speak fast, they just connect all the words together. I really want that to sink in. Native comprehension isn't about having some supercomputer brain that can process raw speed. It is entirely about understanding word connection. It's like a giant puzzle. Native speakers aren't racing the clock, they're just taking shortcuts. They're blending things together for maximum efficiency. Honestly, once you stop listening for speed and start listening for those connections, the whole language just opens up for you. So to help you master these connections, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll tackle the fast English myth. Second, shrinking and linking words. Third, the hidden ch sound. Fourth, when T becomes D. And finally, we'll wrap it up with putting it into practice.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the fast English myth. It is officially time to completely debunk this illusion of speed that leaves so many dedicated English learners feeling, frankly, overwhelmed and defeated. Listen to me. You aren't slow, and they aren't fast. Something else entirely is happening mechanically in the mouth and on the breath. And this brings us to connected speech. By definition, this is the practice of omitting syllables and putting words together as if one sentence is literally one big word. Think about how a textbook teaches you to speak. It teaches you to split every single word up. It's very precise, but because it's so separated, it sounds rigid and, well, a little robotic. Native speakers absolutely do not want to work that hard. They want their speech to flow naturally, effortlessly, like water. So instead of a sentence being 10 separate words, connected speech turns that sentence into one long continuous sound.
Moving right along to Section 2, shrinking and linking words.
So this is the very first mechanical rule of native speech. To create that flowing one big word effect we just talked about, native speakers take smaller, less important words and literally shrink them down so they're way easier to pronounce in daily conversation. Let's look at a classic textbook example. If you were reading a book, you would say, very stiffly, I am going to do some shopping, right? Every word gets equal weight. But in standard connected speech, I am going shrinks and links into I'm gonna. So we get I'm gonna do some shopping. Already it flows so much better. But wait, in the ultra-casual, highly contracted flow you'd hear hanging out with friends, I'm gonna shrinks even further to just Imma. Imma do some shopping. Think about that contrast between I am going to and Imma. I mean, it sounds like an entirely different language.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how aggressive this shrinking can actually get. Take formal English, for instance. Let me give you something. Now compare that to the native flow. Let me give you something. Do you see what happened there? The letter T is entirely omitted. It's just literally gone. Let me becomes lemmy. Why? Well, because saying let me requires you to actually stop the airflow in your mouth for the T and then start it all over again for the M. It's way too much work. Lemmy is just smoother. And we see this with other small words too. The word you often gets shrunk down to a simple ya sound. So instead of the rigid, do you want to go for a walk? A native speaker smoothly glides right through it. Do you want to go for a walk?
All right, let's jump into Section 3, the hidden cha sound.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that native speakers are so wildly dedicated to making their speech flow smoothly, they will literally invent entirely new sounds that aren't written anywhere in the dictionary. No way, right? But check this out. Listen to the separated words, what do you? But in connected speech, it becomes, what you do? Okay, where on earth did that cha sound come from? Well, here's the mechanical secret.
When a word ends with the letter T, like the word what, and the very next word begins with a D or Y, like do or you, the physical collision of those letters in the mouth naturally creates a ch sound. So what do you morphs seamlessly into whatcha. You're going to hear this constantly in phrases like what you do for a living. If you're sitting there waiting for a native speaker to clearly enunciate what do you'll miss the entire conversation because they're already saying whatcha and moving on.
Which perfectly brings us to section 4, when T becomes D.
Let's see how this all builds into our next rule. If you really want to understand the classic American linguistic rhythm, this is honestly perhaps the most famous quirk of them all. It's widely known as the flap T. The rule is pretty simple. In American English, when the letter T appears in the middle of a word, it is naturally pronounced as a D to achieve a faster, smoother pace. This is actually a massive distinction between American English and British English. Over in Great Britain, they favor a much crisper, harder T. They might say bitter with a very sharp T. But Americans, we soften it. We just glide right over it. Let me show you how pervasive this really is.
Let's rhythmically read through this vocabulary list together. I really want you to hear exactly how the T converts to a D in real time. We don't say letter, we say letter, city, bitter, water, bottle, butter, computer, daughter, little, 30. Notice how my voice just gently bounces over those middle consonants? It is actually physically unnatural and uncomfortable for an American to say computer with a hard T in casual conversation. It totally breaks the flow. The D sound is softer, it requires way less breath restraint, and it keeps the sentence moving forward at that natural native pace.
And finally, section 5, putting it into practice.
Okay, so we've learned the cheat codes, we've seen the mechanics in action. Now we're going to look at the grand finale of this explainer and see literally all of these rules layered together in real time right within a single sentence. I'm going to read this text exactly as a textbook student would, stiff, robotic, and with every single word completely separated. Ready? I am going to go out to Walmart. Do you need anything? Now, don't get me wrong, it's perfectly grammatically correct, but it is entirely devoid of natural rhythm. It genuinely sounds like a machine reading a user manual.
Now listen to the comparison. The native speaker takes that exact same sentence and applies the mechanics. I am going to instantly gets reduced to I'm gonna. Then pay close attention to the end of Walmart and the beginning of do. Walmart ends in a T. Do begins with a D. And what happens when those meet? Yep, you guessed it, we get that hidden che sound. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is that the sentence completely transforms. It becomes, I'm gonna go out to Walmart, do you need anything? Listen to how smoothly that all links up. Walmart, you need anything? This is the ultimate proof that native English is simply a masterful synthesis of these connection rules. It is absolutely not about speed, it is 100% about efficiency.
So, as we wrap things up today, I want to leave you with this final provocative question. What other words have a T in the middle that actually sounds like a D? Your challenge right now is to stop treating English like some dry academic subject and start treating it like a puzzle. Apply these mechanics. Go out into your daily life, listen to native speakers, and actively hunt for these phonetic clues. Look for the drop T's, listen for the hidden ch's, and start chaining your own words together. Because once you master the connections, you master the whole language. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep practicing, keep listening, and I will see you next time.